Are you ready to embark on an adventure through the world of words? Join us on the Reading Revolution and let's explore the exciting world of literacy together. Hello and welcome to the Reading Revolution, powered by bookvending.com. I'm your host, Josh Gregory. We've got a banger of an episode today as we talk to internationally known businessman, former CEO of 7-Eleven and Blockbuster Inc., James Keyes. He's an aviator, he's a musician, and now he's an author. We'll be talking about his latest book, Education is Freedom. James, thank you so much for joining us here on the Reading Revolution. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Great to be with you.
So let's start at the start. Let's talk a little bit about your background, where you came from and how you rose to the positions that you had. And, then we'll start talking about education and how it played a role in that success.
Sure. Well, I'm going to share a story with you that you'll appreciate, since the name of your program is Reading Revolution. You'll appreciate this. I had an uncle who was the only relative in my family who had gone to college. He was a teacher in North Adams, Massachusetts. So I had no frame of reference for college or education or business or any of that stuff. I grew up in a very small town in very humble surroundings. But this one uncle had a fabulous house up in North Adams, Massachusetts. When we'd go up there, if you recall, there's a place called the Mohawk Trail that winds through, if you know anything about Massachusetts, through western Massachusetts and the Berkshire Mountains. And during the fall, it's fabulous with trees that are just ablaze with color and fresh apple orchards. So it's an idyllic surrounding. Well, that was my frame of reference going up there to see my uncle in this big house and his library. And he had this fabulous library with books. And in my little kid brain, I equated books and my uncle to success because he was a school teacher. And I didn't know anybody that had the freedom. You'll hear that theme as well, that my uncle had, because he had summers off. He could travel, he could do things. I thought, wow, what a great job. Versus my dad, who was working in a factory and had to work 2 shifts and work so hard. I saw my uncle and these books being somehow that magic portal to success and freedom. Now, dial that story forward. And of course, then I used books myself and education to advance my own academic success and then ultimately my career. We'll come back to that in a minute. Many, many years later, probably 30 years later, I had my wife with me and I said, we have to go visit my Uncle Lenny. And we drove up the Mohawk Trail to North Adams, Mass. And I said, Uncle, I want you to show me the library. First of all, we pulled up to this, I described it as this majestic home on a hill. It was a little tiny frame house. He's a teacher. He didn't have that much money, right? So the little tiny frame house. And we walked in and I thought, boy, this thing shrunk. What happened to the big mansion? But when you're a little kid, again, your frame of reference is different. And he said, Jim, we don't have a library. What are you talking about? I never had a library. I have a kitchen, a living room, a couple bedrooms. We don't have a room for a library in here. I said, no, Uncle Lenny, I know you had a library. There were these books, all of these books. And he said, you mean this? And he took me into literally the washroom. And right above a washer dryer was one shelf of books. To me, as a child, it was a library. And that was the spark that I needed as a kid to equate books with knowledge, knowledge with success, and success with freedom.
And it's amazing what a great story. And just the imagination that you have as a kid, but it was strong enough to really capture that feeling that you had inside yourself that was there all along. It just needed that little spark to come out. That's a fascinating story and a way to look at it.
Exactly. And that's my mission today. I want to recreate that spark in all young people to say, you can do this too. Look at the freedom I have. And you know what? You can have it too. And here's how to get there. And books, and maybe not in today's vernacular, while I've actually written a book to help tell this story, it's probably more online that I'm going to be able to reach these young people and to be able to light that fire. That's my dream, to be able to light that fire in so many young people, to be able to say, wait a minute, I can do that. I too want freedom. I want the freedom to be able to travel the world and to have wake up like Jim every day is a new adventure. I never know what interesting opportunity will come down my path tomorrow. And it all is attributable to my breadth of knowledge that allows me to go in hundreds of different directions.
So it's safe to say that education played a very big role in your upbringing, through high school and then your travels to attending Holy Cross.
Absolutely. It was a critical path. In fact, it was the only way that I would escape what was ultimately poverty. I grew up in a home without running water, literally. That was ultimately condemned by the town because it was so inappropriate for a normal family life. And by some miracle, I was able to end up at Holy Cross College and was working two jobs to be able to figure it out, and somehow put the pieces together, recognizing that education, I didn't know how or why. Both of my parents wanted a better life for me, and both of them encouraged me strongly to turn to education as the path. In fact, my dad used to say, it sounded somewhat fatalistic, but he said, it's the one thing no one can take from you. He had a very hard life. So he said, they can take your money, they can take your things, they can take your job, they can take lots of things, but they can't ever take what you know. And so build as much knowledge as if it was wealth in itself. Build knowledge, and that will give you freedom to do whatever you want in life.
We talk a lot about that, building of foundations. When you were a kid, or even in your teenage years or early 20s, did you have any idea that that's where your education was going to lead you to being an internationally known business person with these massive, massive companies? Did that ever cross your mind as a kid?
Honestly, I couldn't even dream that big. I couldn't. I didn't know enough about the world to even know what would be an option. And so I set out with some relatively simple goals. My first was, maybe I can be a teacher like my uncle. He has a lot of freedom. It would be far better than the factory my dad worked at. And then as I progressed, I thought, why would I want to be a teacher? I could be a lawyer, or I could be a doctor if I just continue my education. Wouldn't that be even more freedom? And then as I progressed, I actually applied to law school, and I had a professor intercept me along the way and say, Jim, please don't go to law school. You're going to be a terrible lawyer. You'd be a far better business person. And he talked me literally into getting a JD MBA, or pursuing a JD MBA degree, which is how I ended up at Columbia University, because they were one of the earlier schools to offer the joint degree. And I never, ever would have guessed that I'd have the privilege of leading one, much less two, Fortune 500 companies, and traveling all over the world in the course of managing and leading those companies.
And I would think with all of the, hobbies, we kind of talked a little bit about, your love of aviation, and you are a pilot. All of that also stems from just education and being open to the world and other stories and other things to do. I mean, really, truly, reading does open up so many doors for everyone.
It does, absolutely. And you know what, the inspiration to fly came from? Ironically, I grew up in that Apollo and Gemini era of space exploration, and guys like Buzz Aldrin or Charlie Duke or Al Warden or Walt Cunningham. These were my heroes. Jim Lovell. They were my heroes as a child, and the thing that was so interesting about the Apollo program, very few people attribute this transformation in people to the Apollo program, but these were simple men. These were not rocket scientists. These were not rich people who, were able to buy their way into space. I saw guys like Buzz Aldrin as somebody like me who worked hard and went to school and studied and was given the privilege then of being one of the first men to walk on the moon. And so I said, well, maybe that's my path. If that's all it takes is hard work and study, I'll go be an astronaut. Um, Literally, that was probably the single biggest motivator during my young years in academics and studying. And then ultimately, I had the privilege one day of being on stage with Buzz Aldrin. Yeah, it was amazing. I was inducted into an organization called the Horatio Alger Association for Distinguished Americans. And they induct about 10 people a year who the Horatio Alger was a novelist who wrote rags to riches stories. And so this organization basically uses as an example people who have had some success but came from very modest beginnings to inspire young people and raise money for scholarships, et cetera. And so here I was on stage with my childhood hero, Buzz Aldrin. And I was able to attribute my success and my ability to be there on stage to him and his inspiration. While he was walking on the moon, I was in Boy Scout camp. And what a wonderful thing. I've since become fast friends with Buzz, and Buzz helped me to meet a number of the other Apollo astronauts. And I'm still a space geek and love hanging out with those guys. They're all absolutely amazing human beings. And I pinch myself every time I have the ability to have one of them in the cockpit of my airplane flying along. Just amazing.
How did he take that story when you could relate that to him, to tell him face to face that he was an inspiration?
I'm sure he's heard it so many times. It was, but at the same time, you always appreciate that. I from time to time have someone come up to me and say, "Hey, you started a foundation called Education is Freedom. I wouldn't be in school today but for you. Or I wouldn't have this job." And it always does touch your heart that you were able to inspire somebody. But at the same time, I'm sure Buzz has the same, the same feeling that I have when someone says that. You think, well, thank you, but I'm just Jim. I didn't really do anything to inspire you. And these guys are some of the most humble people. Buzz, yes, Buzz is a character, but he doesn't sit there and reflect on his self-greatness at all, ever. Nor does Charlie Duke, one of the most humble human beings and spiritual human beings I've ever met. These are absolutely wonderful people who accomplished great things and inspired so many. But I guarantee you, they don't see themselves in that fashion as heroes by any means, or the inspirational figures that they really are.
Men who created great things but remained humble at the same time. That's another admirable character trait for someone to have. Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. In fact, I've got a whole chapter in the book about character, and I use Charlie as an example. I've got a wonderful story about Charlie sitting next to another admiral who was the head of University of Texas. And here was a very distinguished admiral. He was sitting with Roger Staubach, so three graduates of the Naval Academy sitting side by side. And I had invited Charlie to this event. So they were talking to each other. And the admiral turned to Roger after the event and said, "Yeah, that guy Charlie went to the Naval Academy too. He's a pretty interesting guy. What a nice man." And Roger said, "Didn't you talk to him about the moon?" And he said, "Moon? What do you mean the moon?" So he sat next to Charlie Duke for an entire dinner, and they shared stories about Naval Academy. But Charlie never said, "I'm one of four men alive right now that walked on the moon." And the admiral walked away from that, and he actually wrote a book called The Hero Code that referenced that dinner and how Here's a man that walked on the moon and didn't feel the need to brag about it.
That's
Pretty
amazing.
amazing.
That is amazing. You know, I heard a phrase recently, and I can't attribute it to who I heard it from, but it was ability will get you to the top, but it's character that will keep you there. And that is a perfect story for that kind of analogy.
That's so correct. So correct. I've actually in the book I've tried to characterize something I call the C-suite learnings, and I talk about the what of learning, the how of learning, and the why. And the why, I talk about collaboration because we live in a society with other people. I talk about cultural literacy because it's important to understand other people and learn from them because let's face it, it's a world of very, very different cultures, and we can learn more from other cultures than our own. And then the third key in the why of learning is character, because I describe character in the book as it's sort of our brand. You know, we have I'm sitting here with a soft drink, and you know what's in this soft drink because of that brand that's right there on the can. Well, when it comes to character, each of us, that's our brand. So when people see us, they know based on our integrity, our humility, our gratitude, our compassion, those things that make us who we are, that becomes the brand and the level of trust. Just like a product that you pick up off the shelf, you go for the one that you trust. You know what's inside. And it's the same with people.
So let's get into the crux of education is freedom. And maybe even before that, what was the inspiration to sit down and write a book about your experiences and what education means to you and what it can mean to others?
Well, I came to realize the name came from a visit I made to Columbia University. I was walking across campus and I came across a young man walking in my direction, and he had a T-shirt on, and it had those three words on it: "Education is freedom." And it stopped me in my tracks because I recognized at that point I wouldn't be there. I was going back to teach a class at Columbia. I was feeling kind of full of myself. I was like, "Wow, this is pretty cool. I'm here in a suit and tie going to teach others." And but then I realized I saw that t-shirt and I realized, you know what? I thought I was done learning, but I want to continue this path toward freedom. I've got a license to learn now, but I've still got to keep learning. So that was one lesson. And the other was if education got me here, then why can't it get virtually anybody here? There's no excuse because all I had is a set of borrowed encyclopedias to start with. And today, people are armed with all kinds of technology to learn virtually anything and supplement their formal education with it. So I set out to build a foundation 20 years ago called the Education is Freedom Foundation for the sole purpose of getting in front of young people and let them know, hey, there's a path to success here. And the secret to success is the more knowledge you build, the more success you'll have. And not money, not the more money you'll have, the more freedom you'll have. Money's just a byproduct.
I like the way that there's that approach, and I can go back as far as the late 70s and thinking about education where a lot of times there was this divide between, well, here's the brainiacs that are going to build the spaceships, and here are the guys who are going to fix them, and always missing the point that there's education in both, quite different on some different levels, but it's still about the learning. It's about the reading. You can't just open up the hood of a car and start going to work. And I think, and I'd love to hear, your thoughts on it. Are we getting more back to that where it's more acceptable to follow your dream, follow your pathway, but understand that there is a path, sure or no bones about it, that you're going to go on that is going to be focused on education?
Yeah, it comes down to whatever you want to learn. If you want to be a plumber, great. Be a plumber, but be the best plumber you can be and learn and keep learning your craft. If you want to be an airline pilot, it doesn't require a college degree, but you have to train constantly to keep, because your own life is in your hands, never mind the life of your passengers. So it requires constant learning, constant training, things like weather, communications, aeronautics, mechanics of the aircraft itself if something breaks. So it's all about constant learning. But there is something that I'm worried about right now in this focus, because we have a strong focus on vocations. That's a very good thing, because people should be proud of the vocations, and we should train in vocations that don't necessarily need a college degree. But I do worry that it's a siren song. And I'll give you an example. When I was in school, I was working for McDonald's, and McDonald's encouraged me to see their path as a vocation. They encouraged me to go to Hamburger U instead of a traditional four-year school. And it was very tempting because they were going to pay me really well while I went to Hamburger U. And I might have been fine if I stayed in that McDonald's vertical, because it was very specialized training. That's my fear for young people today, that they give into the siren's call of near-term, well-paying jobs that are a perfectly acceptable vocation. But would you rather be the pilot of that aircraft, or would you rather own the aviation company that flies other people around? Or would you rather be up front, like I am, flying your own aircraft and doing something else as a vocation? That's the difference between the breadth of education that you get, hopefully through college and maybe even graduate school, versus saying, I don't need that college thing. I'll just stop now and go do something that pays really good money today. It's not about the money is the point. It's about the freedom. Hence the name of the book, Education is Freedom.
And the expansion of the self-fulfillment that, I mean, money sure buys lots of nice things, but to your point, perhaps not what really fuels the soul.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And not everyone is like this. Some people like to be very specialized and like to do just one thing. In my case, I like the breadth of opportunity, because let's face it, we all get bored sometimes with the one thing we're doing. And in my case, I know now that I can learn another skill, another hobby, another direction, avocation, if you will, or even I could learn another vocation if I chose to, because I understand the key to learning. I understand how to learn, what to learn, and why to learn, and all of that gives me options. And that's what I love about education, is it creates optionality.
Hey everyone, hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. Wanted to take a moment to tell you about our sponsor, bookvending.com. To learn more about bringing Inchy the Bookworm into your school or organization, our custom graphic options, fundraising, program implementation, and more, visit bookvending.com today. And while you're at it, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for notification of new episodes, and follow us on all of our social media outlets. Look for @bookvending. Now, back to the reading revolution. So let's talk a little bit more about the book and get into actually what you were going through while you wrote it. What were your favorite parts of writing the book? And then were there any aha moments that you had writing it, the things that you hadn't considered until you were actually sitting down and putting paper to pen or pen to paper?
So many. It was a fascinating process. You opened the discussion today about, talking about how to write a book. I mean, I didn't even know how to start. Where do you begin? And thankfully, I've got some very, very good mentors. A friend named Stedman Graham, who's a well-published author, has written 12, 13 books, spends his whole life inspiring young people. He was my muse, if you will. He was on me for for 20 years, saying, you write the book, because the foundation wasn't reaching enough people. He said, this is a message that needs to be worldwide. Well, Stedman actually then gave me the template, because he's written so many books. He said, here's the format. I'm going to make it simple for you. Fill in the blanks. You have to do a bio. You have to do the target market. You have to do a description of the book. And here's 2 chapters you have to write. And now I had a roadmap to make it simple to write a book. Then I had to find an agent. Then I had to find a publisher. Then I had to find someone to edit and help write and format the book. So it was really quite an interesting journey. But to the point of, did I have any aha moments? I had so many. I found the research for the book was fascinating. So you want to hear a couple of those examples?
100%, please.
Okay, so I'm writing a chapter on confidence because I've for many, many years taught that the key to success, and this is the what in my roadmap, what to learn. Well, what to learn is the key to success is embracing change, having confidence, and having clarity, communication, both inbound through listening and outbound in communicating. And those three things are critically important. And if you don't know those, if you don't learn what to learn about change, confidence, and clarity, you won't go past go. It'll be hard in school, it'll be hard in your career. So I've always taught those things, and I decided I'm going to have a chapter on each. Embracing change and the power of adversity in your life, and being able to help you realize that on the other side of adversity can be learning and positive things. And so a chapter on confidence and preparation. Here I am writing the chapter on confidence. And I've struggled myself and through my life and my career, because I am very confident. As you can probably tell, I believe I can do anything with enough time and effort. But that confidence has always been a challenge for me, because there's a fine line I have to be careful of, that I don't slip over into arrogance. And some people can interpret my level of confidence as arrogance. And in the corporate workplace, that can really work against you. No one wants to follow your lead if they think you're pompous and arrogant, etc. So I tried to understand that. And I thought, well, I've tried my best throughout my career to manage that, but I need some other examples. All right, who's a great example of confidence that maybe does cross that line sometimes? Well, how about our past president? How about Donald Trump? And he's kind of a poster child for, I can do this. It's all about, et cetera, et cetera. But he does sometimes perhaps cross that line. And I thought, well, I wonder why. And I thought, where does he get that confidence anyway? And why is it perhaps that he's not sensitive to that line? And I started researching him to understand confidence. And what I discovered is his confidence came from his dad. And his dad's confidence came from his mentor, his protege, a guy named Norman Vincent Peale, who wrote The Power of Positive Thinking. I was like, aha, okay, power of positive thinking. Of course, that's where he gets his confidence. But here's an important feature that I didn't discover until researching the book. And it was a huge aha moment for me personally, too, because it helps me personally. Norman Vincent Peale, as a preacher, preached equal doses of positive thinking and confidence and the importance of humility. Humility, not in self-deprecation, although, that's fine, but not believing that you're not as good as someone else, you're not adequate for whatever, but instead humility in the sense that I know that I am smart or I'm good or whatever at something, but I also know that I have more to learn from everybody else, because everybody has something they're better at than me. And so if I look at this discussion we're having, I know that you have something that you do know or can help me with that I don't know. So I want to learn from you. And as long as I don't ever forget that as much as I think I know, I have more to learn from every individual that I encounter, that's a form of humility that Norman Vincent Peale taught, that I like to joke that Donald maybe didn't attend class that day or to the sermon that day and missed that important element. But I think it's so, so true that it is such an important part of confidence to be confident enough to know that you have more to learn from other people.
And, one of the lessons that I've learned and, throughout my career is surrounding yourself with sometimes people who know more about things that you don't. That just makes a more successful team. And I would say the same thing happens in education when you are around like people with similar interests or at least the same drive and goals. Everybody has a better chance of succeeding.
Exactly, exactly. And that's the collaboration that I talked about. That's so critically important that together we're stronger than we are individually. I use the symphony orchestra as an example. I learned how to play the trumpet as a little kid, and my trumpet was sounded terrible until they put me into a group, and I was able to play in a grammar school or a early school orchestra. And I thought, wow, I sound pretty good. Well, I didn't, but together we sounded a lot better than I would ever have dreamed of sounding individually. And it's just such a great example of the power of collaboration. The same thing applies to virtually anything we do. So yeah, absolutely.
With the messaging of your foundation and now this book, great messages and a great platform to be, pushing this message out about the importance of education. In your estimation, what else can folks do who might not be involved in a foundation or might not have the ability or the talent to write a book? What can they be doing to bring the same sort of passion to those around them to encourage them to focus on their education?
Well, the subtitle of the book was something that I spent a lot of time trying to figure out. How do I make it a call to action? Exactly what you said. It's a call to action for each of us as individuals to say, the future's in your hands. And that, I mean, literally for the individual to set the example of lifelong learning. It doesn't matter what age you are. So for young people, yes, of course, the future really is in your hands. But even for those of us who are in later stages of life, life can be so much richer. If I'm going to travel to another country, it's so much more interesting if I understand the culture and take the time, maybe even learn a little bit of the language or the foods and the things that I'll be experiencing. But instead, we tend to just go and we don't stop to take the time to learn. So when I say the future is in your hands, I mean for students, by all means, there's no excuse today because of the availability of technology to supplement whatever formal education they have. As bad as an environment may be, or any given school system may have its challenges, the reason to use that as an excuse is unacceptable. Because if your math teacher is horrible, you can get on Khan Academy free and learn math with the best of them, or find some algebra teacher online that may be far superior to whoever's teaching you algebra in class. So there's virtually no excuse. The future is in your hands as an individual. And then I mean it also collectively, that together as society, we've got to stop this fear-driven culture that is constantly worried about things that we don't need to worry about that can be cured through knowledge. And it's either eliminating our fear because we've learned that we don't have anything to be afraid of, or helping someone else eliminate their fear by teaching them. So the future truly is in our hands collectively.
Do you think there is a parallel or a connection between technology and what we were talking about a little bit earlier with the idea of character when it comes to education, where some people see a lot of the things that are available as, hey, this is the easy way out, it'll be done for me, and others take the approach that this is something that can help refine my ideas. Do you see a correlation with that, or is that a something that we should consider a threat, or just another sign of the times?
I see it as an opportunity, not a threat. Now, you'll find a common theme. I tend to look for the opportunity in change, not the inertia or resistance to change that tends to slow us down as a people. Let me give you an example. artificial intelligence. Everybody's terrified of artificial intelligence. The machines are going to eat us. They're gonna take over the world. Well, think about machine learning. The machine learning is a matter of the technology continuing to get better because it learns from itself and it teaches itself how to learn smarter and better and faster, and it keeps getting better and better and better. Well, if education is being administered via artificial intelligence, machine learning, then my device that I'm learning from, instead of a good old-fashioned book, I shouldn't bash books because I just wrote one, but instead of me learning from this, in which case I have to be good at reading and comprehension, instead I've got a device, let's call it this for lack of a better example. Now this device, because of the technology in it, can teach me the way I'm best responding to it. So it can, through a repetitive process of teaching, perhaps with video, perhaps with words, perhaps with audio, it can quickly determine which way I am comprehending fastest, test me, and then modify the way I'm being taught to best administer it in the way I learn the fastest. That's human learning, not machine learning. It's human learning in the same sense that we can accelerate human learning by harnessing machine learning. And to me, that is so exciting. It is a new frontier in terms of the ability for humans to leverage the power, our mental capacity. Science knows we use a tiny portion of the power of our brain. So imagine what possibilities could be for generations down the road with this kind of transformation in the use of technology to enhance human learning.
I just read something that the activist and philosopher Noam Chomsky wrote about the advent of AI, and he talks a little bit about that it's not necessarily intelligence, it's doing what we've told it to do, and it will never fully replace the creativity and the inspiration that we have as humans. It's a tool to be used, but it's kind of what you said, not to be feared.
Exactly. In fact, there's a lot of narrative now that education is just not as important anymore, and schools are teaching the wrong things, blah blah blah, all this noise. But I think it's very dangerous because with machine learning, we absolutely know, to your point, the technology can go really deep in ways that humans potentially can't. What the technology will always struggle with is going broad, having that intuition, having the emotion, having the character, all of those other meta skills, if you will, that we as humans can have. And so those things don't just happen. They come through the formal education process and through collaboration, through cultural literacy, through the things that we get primarily in school. It's hard to get those things working by yourself behind a computer. So I do think I'm sort of the counterpoint to a lot of the narrative out there now that school is less important. I think it's more important than it ever has been before, because in the machine age and the information age, as humans, we want to go broad. We want to have as much depth of or breadth of knowledge about more things: philosophy, humanities, science, the arts. We want that people to have that breadth of knowledge, which I think will allow us to more effectively harness the power of machines well into the future.
What was, if you've got one or two that you can hit on, challenges that you faced while writing Education is Freedom?
I think it's like many of the challenges that we all face every day. I've run into the naysayers. I've run into the people saying, "Oh, no one cares. You don't have a voice. Who do you think you are writing this book?" Remember when we were in grammar school We raised our hand, said, "Hey, me, call on me." And how many kids gave us a hard time for that and said,
Mhm.
don't be that guy. And all you wanted to do is you wanted to learn and you wanted to impress the teacher and excel, right? But the peer pressure would drag you down. And I tried to analyze that in the book because I was getting it in the course of writing the book. Why are you writing the book? Nobody cared. Wasting your time, all that stuff. And I thought, it's not that different from when you're growing up as a kid and everybody telling you you're not smart enough, you're not good enough. And then I encountered that in the workplace. My first job was at my dad's the same factory my dad worked at. I thought, I wonder why he didn't want me to work here. I want to go do it. But besides, they paid a lot more than McDonald's. So I worked there for the summer. And the harder I worked, the more I made people mad at me because I was an outlier and I was making everybody else look bad. So it was the same as the little kid raising his hand in class. I started getting all of the negative stuff. And then so I thought, boy, I'm glad I'm not in one of these factory environments. I'm going to go be a professional. I ran into the same thing in the professional world. The outliers, whoever they are, tend to be discouraged by the rest of the pack. There's a pressure for conformity. There's a pressure for, sadly, mediocrity, with all the people saying, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough. Well, surprisingly, I encountered that even in my own little journalistic adventure, because I don't think anybody thought it had a chance of success. And yet I had to power through all of those negative perceptions, and believe in myself to the point that I've got a message that I must share with others. And if it's the right message, it will take off. If it isn't, no harm, no foul. I won't be discouraged or disappointed by it.
Well, I honestly think everyone loves a success story, no matter what it's in, whether it's prowess on a sports team or in business or in any of the other aspects of life. I think people want to hear these kinds of stories and hear this sort of advice that you're sharing with folks because again, it's that turning it around, it's inspiring others for that greatness that we know is inside us as long as we apply it.
Yeah, exactly. Interestingly, individually, we all want to hear success stories and we always want to cheer on the winner. But collectively, we tend to run in packs.
Yes.
And that group think that it sort of discourages the outliers and slaps them down. Don't be different. Don't be creative. Don't be smart. You're making us all look bad. So, yeah, you have to overcome that sort of tribal behavior or pack behavior, if you will. We see it in society. We see it in politics now. We see otherwise very rational people behaving like tribal beings, doing things that they don't really believe in because it's conforming to the wishes of the group that they identify with.
And forgetting that we're all in this together.
Exactly, exactly. And that individual success is our collective success. We should be lifting each other up as a society, not slapping each other down.
James, what do you see as the biggest opportunities for kids growing up today when it comes to education, whatever schools that they can attend, what any materials that they might be able to get from? What we do here is we talk about books and reading, and there's libraries. Where do you see these opportunities lying that kids can take advantage right this minute?
Well, absolutely, the access to information through technology. Books are the core. I would never steer someone away from books because ultimately books were the portal for me to be able to have that freedom that I have today. But to supplement books with technology that can accelerate your ability to comprehend and your ability to learn, critically important. And as I said before, there's no excuse today that you can access anything. You learn anything by YouTube. There's a video teaching you how to learn on YouTube. There's a video teaching you how to do math. And so there's really no excuse today. But there's an important thing that is almost a prerequisite. I mentioned it, I glossed over it. Dealing with change, having confidence, having clarity. Those three elements are so critically important. But the number one killer, the number one, bar none, is fear. We are just one step away from cavemen. I know this sounds harsh, but we have a portion of our brain that is a fight or flight trigger that responds to change. And if we detect something that's a threat, maybe it's another kid raising his hand that will make us look bad, we react to it and we react negatively to it. And we create this bubble of fear around ourselves. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not smart enough. So why waste my time studying? Because I probably won't pass the test anyway. Negativity and fear. The antidote to fear is knowledge. I equate it to turning a light on. When you're in the dark and you're afraid, you turn a light on and you look around and you say, oh, okay, there's nothing here to threaten me. I'm okay. You're activating the cancellation of that caveman element of your brain that basically says, if I'm afraid, I'm going to save myself through fighting or fleeing. And when you turn the light on, you realize, okay, I don't have anything to be afraid of. So now I can relax. I can move forward. If we can just use knowledge as light, same way, I'm afraid of something, therefore I'm going to learn more about it. And once I learn about it, I realize, you know what? I didn't have anything to be afraid of. It's the answer ultimately to so much in society as individuals and collectively.
That's great. I love that. Can you tell us a little bit about the Education is Freedom Foundation? How can people get involved with that?
Sure, it's available online. It is a 501c3, so we welcome everyone to contribute to its success. It basically is building a model that I hope to see expand throughout the country. Basically, what it says is everyone has a chance for unlimited opportunity if we can just find those sparks that will ignite their curiosity, their critical thinking, their creativity to be able to want to dig in and learn. So we try to intercept kids as early as the 6th and 7th grade to say, hey, you can go to college, but here's what you have to do. And here's why it's important. Because there's unlimited opportunity. Forget about the money, because yes, you might be able to make more going to work for the warehouse and make overtime. But think about how much more freedom you will have in life and opportunity if you pursue knowledge and education as your path. So we try to get them early enough. And then we mentor them and advise them through high school. We have advisors in 23 or something of the public high schools in Dallas, Texas, as an example. We've had over 500,000 kids in 20 years come through this program, and I have countless examples of lives being changed, people who never would have gone to school, first generation in their family to get an education, to go on to school, who in some cases never went in the elevator of a big building, didn't know what went on in those buildings. And now they work for Deloitte or they work for a law firm. And they just we've changed so many lives by just enlightening them, just lighting up their curiosity and their natural instinct to want to learn.
Well, I appreciate your time taking this much with us here on the Reading Revolution. How can people find you online? And then we'll let you get back to promoting your book, and hopefully we helped you out a little bit here today as well.
Yeah, I'm grateful for the opportunity. My objective, by the way, is and don't let me forget to give you the contact information, but my objective is for this book not to be just something that people buy. Yes, I do want you to go on Amazon.com or Barnes & Noble or whatever and try to buy the book, but I want it to be a book you give. I've been giving away a lot of them myself, and I just want this to end up being in the hands of somebody who needs it. And then I also want you to encourage them to give it to somebody else. Keep paying it forward so that more and more young people especially can understand the power of knowledge. How do you find me? jameswkeys.com. I've got a website that with links to Education is Freedom Foundation, with links to be able to buy the book, a little background on me, and you'll see some of the crazy many avocations that I have, from art to music to flying. And then at jkeys, same spelling as my name, at jkeys author. You'll find me on Instagram. I've become I've got a lot of TikTok videos out there. I've had a lot of fun with some social media friends doing book promos and just talking about the power of education to transform lives. So that's where I am. I hope. Oh, and James Keys on LinkedIn. You can also find me there.
The book is Education is Freedom. James Keys, our guest here on the Reading Revolution. Thank you so much for your time. It has been a pleasure to have you on with us.
I really enjoyed it, and I greatly appreciate the opportunity. Gratitude is an important part of the learning in the book. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
And that'll wrap it up for this episode of the Reading Revolution. Thanks for joining us. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, share and like our podcast as well, and stay tuned for great shows coming up shortly. If you have a question or comment, or you'd like to suggest a guest to be on the Reading Revolution, email us at readingrevolutionpod@gmail.com. Our technical directors and content creators are David Gagan and Thomas Crane. The Reading Revolution is produced by Jake Blumberg and Connor Russo, and our executive producer is Jay Blumberg. I'm your host, Josh Gregory. We'll see you next time right here on the Reading Revolution.